Whereas Wright's law is a function of units, and it says for every cumulative doubling in the number of units produced by this new technology, costs will decline at a consistent percentage rate. So that's the learning curve. So we think the market and investors broadly are overlooking some massive AI opportunities in other stocks, more software oriented, or they have low gross margins now, like Tesla does in the 20s. These are gross margins, but they will be rising because of this SaaS-like model that is evolving for Tesla. They will rise from the 20s into what we believe is the 50s and 60s.
I don't get it. Elon Musk displays full self-driving version 12 to the world, and the finance news media gives us crickets. I don't get it. Instead, we get news about Xpeng and Didi, the UAW, and the crisis it represents for the legacy autos. Or they talk about VinFast, whose shares are locked up by one person. 99% of the shares are locked up by one individual. All of this stuff is news, but should be an afterthought when you think about what Elon just showed us. This was full self-driving's ChatGPT moment, and nobody batted an eyelash. That's why I'm scrapping all that new stuff. It pissed me off. And we're gonna just focus on Cathie Wood's interview, Tesla information, plus a few things that I figure would be pertinent. If I wasn't all in on Tesla, I'd be trusting my money with Cathie Wood and the crew over there in ARK Invest. But first, Tesla stock is up over 6% today.
So I want to get right to it. I want to start off with some kind of big picture macro questions and then talk more about specific holdings. FANG and now the Magnificent Seven, and they seem to kind of come and go quickly. What's your take on all that right now?
I can look at it from two angles. One would be a worrying angle, which is the market is narrowing to just a few stocks. And so I understand why technicians and others look at a market this way. The other way of looking at this is through our lens today. So if you look at what has happened to ARK after 2 very difficult years, we don't own most of the Magnificent Seven. We own Tesla in size, but the others either not at all or partial positions in our flagship strategy. And we have been able, through the second quarter, we outperformed even the NASDAQ 100, which is dominated by those stocks. I do think our outperformance in the first half, and it was significant outperformance, suggested that maybe underneath the market is broadening out. And that's a very healthy sign. Our investment process, stock selection, starts from the top down. And what we're doing is trying to size how big these new technologies are going to become. What kind of opportunities are they? And to do that, we use something called Wright's law, which is a relative of Moore's law. Moore's law is a function of time, every 18 months to 2 years, same power for half the cost in the semiconductor world. Whereas Wright's law is a function of units, and it says for every cumulative doubling in the number of units produced by this new technology, costs will decline at a consistent percentage rate. So that's the learning curve.
Wright's law is the main reason why I'm so heavily invested in Tesla. They are producing the most battery electric vehicles, bar none. I fully expect Tesla to hit that 2 million units produced this year, or come damn close. The more Tesla vehicles that are produced, the better, the more efficient they will become at producing those vehicles, decimating their costs, allowing them to pass on those cost savings to the consumer or put that toward their margin bottom line.
We can learn from the cost declines and by observing price elasticity of demand, how quickly this technology is going to scale across sectors and turn into a mass market opportunity. So we certainly have done that with electric vehicles and drivetrain battery technology and so forth. we were able to get much closer to the right answer there because we had calculated that for every cumulative doubling in the number of electric vehicles produced, so 1 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, for every cumulative doubling, costs decline 28%.
Damn!
And the total cost of ownership of an electric vehicle now is lower than that of a gas-powered vehicle. And soon the sticker prices will be lower. So that's an example of costs coming down, units exploding. Last year, electric vehicle units globally were up on the order of 65%, while gas-powered sales were down almost 7%. So massive shift, weak auto market, but definitely playing into the favor of EVs. NVIDIA has been primarily hardware historically. By our estimates, for every $1 of hardware sold around this innovation opportunity, AI, we think the software pull-through will be on the order, it depends on the estimate, but somewhere between $8 and $21 for every $1.
I know you guys heard that, right?
So we think the market and investors broadly are overlooking some massive AI opportunities in other stocks, more software oriented.
Did someone say full self-driving version 12?
So my experience with truly disruptive innovation is the old guard, and the old guard are the names that have reached very high levels in many of the benchmarks, that they dismiss these technologies, which are simply nipping at their heels, because we're very sensitive to valuation, contrary to what many people might think. And according to our estimates, and our estimates for NVIDIA are quite aggressive in terms of revenue growth over the next 5 years. We think they're in a beautiful position with the picks and shovels, but everyone knows it. Everyone knows it, and it is valued accordingly. And we have other names in the portfolio on the software side. And remember, for every $1 of hardware, $8 to $21 of software are going to be pulled through. According to our estimates, Tesla is the biggest AI opportunity out there. It is the biggest artificial intelligence project in the world when it comes to autonomous taxi platforms. And it is selling for roughly, I think it's 7 times, maybe it's 6 times revenues now. And these companies have either very high gross margins, like Zoom, 80%, or they have low gross margins now, like Tesla does in the 20s. These are gross margins, but they will be rising because of this SaaS-like model that is evolving for Tesla. They will rise from the 20s into what we believe is the 50s and 60s.
I too am in this camp. These margins that are being discussed nowadays, it's going to be a drop in the bucket. Tesla's software already is worth the list price. I'll say that again. Full self-driving in its beta form, not even V12, but in its beta form, 11. Series, is worth $15,000. And then when you talk about a subscription model, that's a recurring revenue that's going to make them even more money. But that's just the beginning. Tesla will be able to monetize so much of their software. They're going to be making money hand over fist. So whenever the news goes crazy over a price cut, all I see are dollar signs because I see more and more people buying Teslas.
Not at all expected out there.
Right. A couple questions about Tesla then, since you just brought it up. One is valuation again, though. I mean, you can be right. Cathie Wood's right. She's right. But, the stock goes nowhere for 2 years versus the S&P, which is what's happened with Tesla. I mean, okay, you can pick any point and come up with any math you want. I hear you. Also, I noticed that you said that market share probably is going to hold constant. It's just that the number of the EV sales are going to explode, which will drive their business. either of those things sort of concern you, or are you still as sanguine about this company as you've ever been?
No concerns here, even more bullish than when I first invested in the company. Oh, wait. He wasn't talking to me? Oh, go ahead, Cathy.
If anything, their competitive advantages are growing. You've noticed that GM and Ford have signed on to Tesla's charging station. They need that infrastructure. And that has increased our confidence, the fact that GM and Ford and others are signing on to this charging platform tells us that these companies understand that the world is shifting from the internal combustion engine, which still is roughly 90% of auto sales out there, to electric vehicles. Well, Tesla does not have to transition. It is there. It has that DNA already. And then even more important from a valuation point of view, we believe Tesla is the closest auto company and closest tech company to a fully commercialized national autonomous taxi platform.
A multi-trillion-dollar opportunity ripe for the taking.
But if you are a Tesla driver and you have gotten the latest FSD, so full self-driving update in the beta, you will see a marked difference because of the breakthroughs in artificial intelligence that Tesla is using today in order to move towards full self-driving.
Right. With self-driving, question there, Cathy. We all know that the number of deaths caused by human error is, 100, 1,000x versus driverless. And yet the driverless death is going to get all the headlines and freak people out. So when will Americans, or globally, people get over that and be able to sort of just be dispassionate about the numbers rather than robot killed person kind of thing?
Yes, there is a lot of emotion, there's a lot of behavioral science in terms of what goes on in the marketplace. And we went through this with Tesla. So there are 45,000 deaths caused by auto accidents in the US, and somewhere between 1 and 1.25 million globally. 80 to 90% of those are caused by human error. So with Tesla, it was very interesting. Out of the 45,000 accidents that kill people, only Teslas seem to be featured as national news. And there were very few of those, but every single one of them was publicized. And but truth wins out, and that's our philosophy. Do the research. If you're right, then maybe the National Highway Transportation Safety Association will make the point that 80 to 90% of human deaths in autos are caused by human error.
It's a no-brainer, folks. Teslas are not the problem. Full self-driving is not the problem. Over 40,000 deaths per annum caused by human error, but we can now effectively avoid it, and there will be resistance. But I will be here on the front lines letting everyone know that this is the answer. Less deaths. That's a good thing.
When they analyzed Tesla's first fatality, it was in Florida, and it was a blindside by a truck. And it took them 6 months, I think, to analyze it, but they basically came back and said, oh, it seems as though, given the safety features in a Tesla, Tesla's cars are 40% safer than most other cars out there. And that became a selling point for Tesla, for people who actually read these safety reports. So truth wins out.
You mentioned that Tesla's kind of a lightning rod, and to be perfectly frank, Cathy, I mean, some of that has to do with Elon, and that's a risk. I mean, are you concerned, one, about Elon's foray into Twitter, and two, his behavior generally?
And we've had to face this issue since we bought Tesla, which was the day ARK opened its first funds in 2014. And, back then and in 2015, I remember first talking about him when we had the opportunity to be in the media. And I said, he's our Thomas Edison. He is, our age's inventor. And inventors, if you study what they invented historically, if you go back to the Renaissance man, if you go back to Copernicus, who's I put him down as one of my favorite inventors because he argued with Ptolemy about what was the center of the universe, the Earth or the sun. And Copernicus said the sun, and all the physics then matched what he was observing. He was an inventor of many things. I think Elon is that inventor today here in the world. And I have watched him surround himself by incredible professionals, very talented engineering teams. And they work for him for less pay, perhaps, than they might get elsewhere.
Not perhaps. They work for him for less pay. These guys are that talented, they can go start their own companies. They can go be CEOs elsewhere for much, much more money. Elon is the reason why they want to work there and showcase their talent, because it's world changing. It is game changing. Birds of a feather flock together. Eagles soar with other eagles.
Because he is solving the world's hardest problems, including, I would say, Twitter, now X, the controversy over censorship versus not, and just opening up the algorithms, letting everybody see how they're evolving Twitter into a healthier platform, the world's public town square. So he wants to solve the hardest problems in the world, and thank God he does.
Yeah, well, it ain't easy.
Amen.
And you don't necessarily succeed every time either. I think we'd all acknowledge that. It's a portfolio business, right?
Yes, and just to pick up on that, if you look at what Elon has done with SpaceX and rockets and reusable rockets, so being able to land them on barges in the ocean simultaneously, that's amazing. But do you know how many times he had to fail to get that to work? And now we're in the artificial intelligence age, and that's the same is true with everything AI. It'll get better and better over time, but it will be wrong in the beginning. Not until it perfects with more information will it get it completely right.
So much valuable knowledge coming from Cathie Wood. The interview will be linked below. I'm just giving you the Hypercut, Tesla specific stuff, and some other pertinent information. I am disgusted with the mainstream finance media for not giving Tesla the airtime it deserves for achieving this monumentous milestone. That's all I got for you today. Be easy. Peace.